desno pod Ljudmila znak, če hočeš. Ne, te ven, ker se ti predvaja.
Samo drink pravno.
Ja, se pravim, da pet imenovan YouTube.
A si mi objavil?
Ja.
A že dal? Opet.
Greš potem... Ja, tudi nekje. Nekje prideš. A pa pej tam na znaka z Ljudmila klikam, ne, pa to je. To je pa to je.
Dobro. Yannick, I think we are ready for your talk. Introduction. Yes.
You ready? You hear me?
Yes.
Great, now I'll start sharing my screen. So, good morning, Ljubljana. My name is Yannick Hofmann, and I'm a media artist and curator, and I'm working as a deputy head of department for the ZKM Health Lab, which is affiliated with the ZKM Center for Art and Media in Karlsruhe. And today I have the pleasure to present to you the Intelligent Museum, which is an artistic curatorial field of experimentation for deep learning and visitor participation. Before I will actually start, I would like to speak some sort of preamble regarding artificial intelligence. We all know that the new developments in the field of artificial intelligence already have quite a dramatic impact on our everyday life. I mean, we experience it permanently. All of you who are present with a smartphone are permanently surrounded by AI technologies, be it in the form of recommendation systems we experience either on YouTube, Google, or whatsoever, the opinion robots, social bots, etc. And one can even say that every socially relevant process is already penetrated by AI technologies. So in particular, the machine learning technologies, they raise many questions about the effects of AI, but they also provide tools for both artistic and social experimentation. And this is the point of departure for the project, The Intelligent Museum. As the project deals with deep learning specifically, I would also like to elaborate a little bit on what this actually means. So here you have the famous babushka principle of deep learning. So first of all, through the narrative of the tech blogs and also due to the AI hype we experience since quite a while, one can get under the false impression that artificial intelligence is a synonym with artificial neural networks, that artificial intelligence is basically machine learning, but this is a false impression. So there were AI techniques which were already introduced to the arts starting from the late 50s. I mean, everybody who was involved with algorithmic composition or generative art might know this. So AI is a very big field, and machine learning is one subset of artificial intelligence. So machine learning basically preoccupies itself with forms of computation which provide a program with functionality to adjust its internal parameters automatically. Then deep learning is basically machine learning processes which work with artificial neural networks whose functioning operates a little bit like the brain works. And those artificial neural networks get trained on big data, which then gives it the possibility to achieve quite a deep learning effect. So deep learning is probably the most disruptive future technology at this stage. So that's the reason why we wanted to reflect on this, and we started the project. Speaking about the project itself is kindly funded by the German Federal Cultural Foundation with a total grant amount of 880,000 euros. It already got launched starting in 2020, and it will last until 2023. The project is funded as part of the support program for Digital, which is an initiative by the German Federal Cultural cultural foundation which aims at pushing cultural institutions right into the digital age. So they want to have the cultural institutions to make a quantum leap into the future, reflecting on the digital technologies which we all consider as the new cultural technique which we need to learn about. For this project, we formed a very strong alliance together with another cultural institution, which is located in Munich. It is the German Museum of Masterpieces of Science and Technology. And we are also working with a digital partner. It is the Fraunhofer Institute of Optronics, System Technologies, and Image Exploitation. So what are the project goals? Today I would like to focus on 3 columns which are deeply associated with the overall project goal, which is basically to experimentally test out a new museum experience. And this is deeply rooted in the idea of pushing forward so-called knowledge experiments. Over the period of 4 years, we would like to deeply preoccupy ourselves with the technology. We as an institution want to learn more about deep learning and AI technologies, and we would like to collaboratively learn together with our visitors. So these knowledge experiments will take place on site at the ZKM inside the exhibition space, and it will consist of a series of workshops, etc. Then for us it's also some sort of sandbox for AI technologies. So we would like to push forward functional technologies which we might introduce to our museum technological infrastructure. And then last but not least, for us it's a field of artistic experimentation in the domain of different artistic categories. But I will then speak a little bit more about this in the upcoming slide. So first of all, the Intelligent Museum is a knowledge experiment. So in late 2017, we presented an exhibition which was called Open Coasts. So this lasted until the beginning of 2019, and I mention it because it's some sort of blueprint for the methodology we will like to introduce to the project. So as part of Open Codes, experts, non-experts, artists, scientists, etc. met and had encounterings in the exhibition space. So all lectures, all demonstrations and workshops took place in the exhibition space, which was a rather unique case for us. So the overall idea for this exhibition was that knowledge should be freely available, which was also the reason why the admission was free. We gave away fresh fruit and vegetables and coffee for free. So the idea was that knowledge must be freely accessible, and it was also the idea that we want to collaboratively learn together with our visitors. So we did not want to communicate knowledge in a hierarchical way. Here's the institution, there are the visitors. No, it was really a collaborative learning experience. And as mentioned, this methodology will also apply to the Intelligent Museum project. So this image, even though it's probably not the most beautiful image, is symbolic in a way. You already see the visitors, people who learn on site, but you can also see the artistic installation, The World as Data Field by Christian Lopez and Peter Weibel, which is on top, presented on a variety of screens. So here you already have this idea implemented that the museum in a way learns out of big data. But at the same time, the visitors also learn So the idea behind it is the museum learns from its visitors, the visitors learn from the museums, so it's bi-directional and, as said, not hierarchical. So another important aspect is open source and open access. So what we would like to have with this project is all kinds of codes which will get developed during this project will be made freely accessible. They will get uploaded onto an open code repository so that everything is as sustainable as possible, so that artists or developers or other institutions who might want to use program codes which were developed as part of the project can make use of our knowledge which we created. This leads me to the next point. The Intelligent Museum is a testing environment for emerging AI technologies, or it is a sandbox, as I mentioned previously. So we would also like to introduce more functional aspects to the museum, which are based on AI technologies. I give a brief example for that. So at the moment, for instance, we are working on a system which relies on so-called spoken language identification. With this system, we want to lower the barriers for our international guests. The artworks or objects inside the museum should become more accessible. So imagine it like this. You have, for instance, an artistic installation, and in the background there is a microphone running and a machine learning algorithm which can then detect the national language of a group of visitors talking in front of the installation, and it will then quickly adapt and translate a digital textual label in the corresponding language. So that also the digital labels react towards the nationality of the people, so that they can then get more knowledge about the corresponding artwork. And then also due to the corona crisis, which we all experience at the moment, we did have some experiments with computer vision technology, and we experimented with the idea of how can those kinds of technology make the museum experience a more safe and secure thing in this time. Even though we are aware of a few ethical implications, you may be assured that we do not just implement those kinds of technologies, but we also present some, let's say, experimental approaches which we would just like to present and then critically reflect on and discuss as part of this project. So here's a quick demonstration for a system which is able to calculate the social distancing, the social distance, and it gives a warning sign as soon as those distances are not kept by visitors. So as soon as the social distances are not kept, it gives a red rectangle, and if the social distances are kept, then it gives a blue rectangle. So and then there are other possibilities like detecting whether people wear masks or not. So this is then based on more like facial recognition. So we assured we do not want to install another panopticon inside the museum space, but on the other hand, we will experiment with these kinds of technologies, and as part of the project, we will really then critically reflect on the usage of such technology. Then there are technologies we are experimenting with, like pose estimation. So also the Fraunhofer, our digital partner, works successfully with this kind of technologies. They even installed an experimental field in a train station in Mannheim, as part of which skeletized data of passers-by get analyzed, and they are able to spot crimes with this. So they can derive patterns of behavior from this kind of skeletized data, and as soon as a crime is spotted, the police will get a warning sign. This, however, does not work with real photographic contents. They really use only the skeletized data, which is also an interesting aspect. And now speaking of the point of view from an artist, when I see such kinds of technologies, I also think about the possibilities for artistic performances. For instance, one could easily exploit the Schubert. It is called Crawlers, and we will present it as part of an exhibition in late October 2020. So Crawlers is basically a network consisting of 50 social bots who operate a social platform. There they make friends and they get sent user content, which is then textual, but also graphical. So they then start to create new content based on generative neural networks, send it back to the users, and based on the feedback of the users, the bots will then really specialize. So they will develop certain faculties in the runtime of this project, and everything can get followed by the visitor to the ZKM when they come to the ZKM and watch an installation which has some live feedback to the activities of the social bots. Then, now that I have the time already opened, late 2020, the German Museum as well as the ZKM will publish an open call for artistic residencies. Residencies will address different artist groups, starting from artists working in the domain of interactive nations, generative videos, video works, data sonifications, statizations, data sculptures, you name it. So the artistic residencies held at both places, in Munich as well as in Karlsruhe, so they are organized collaboratively as part of the project, and later the artistic outcome will get implemented into an exhibition. Then, this is not scheduled yet, but there will be all a bunch of workshops, there will be a conference as part of which non-experts, artists, and also the ZKM staff will have an encountering as part of which they can then predict applicable dilemmata on artistic aspects, on scientific aspects. So the whole project will get carefully reflected on as part of this conference. Then there will be a hackathon as well as a coding challenge coming up as a project. Here we would like to give the international developer communities the possibility to contribute to the project, and also to innovate and to realize their ideas, and also the outcome of these challenge hackathons will get implemented into the exhibition, which will probably happen in mid-2023, starting at ZKM and later also get presented at the German Museum. So it's quite an ambitious plan for this project. Lots of activity going on. As said, it's a field of experimentation in the domain of sociological experiments in terms of new artistic ideas, also functional aspects. So yeah, we are quite curious what will out of the project, and we are looking forward heavily. So concluding this talk, I got an AI-generated joke. So my colleague Daniel asked GPT-2 model, can you tell me a joke? And it answered, don't waste your life in vain. Silence is a fundamental living principle. It's a natural defense system designed as refuge from the pain of socialized misery and pain of hypermasculinity. So with this I conclude this talk. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so if
And of course,
somebody has
open to your questions.
questions, Yannick is here, so please ask them.
I have a question, but I'm hearing myself.
Yeah.
Did you already ask the question?
Yannick, while we are talking, please, because we have a lot of feedback. We hear ourselves very loud.
So if you mute yourself, I will ask a question.
Yeah, please don't mute.
Okay, super. I'm Ida from Museum of Contemporary Art here in Ljubljana. We have much less advanced questions regarding the museum as a platform to develop AIs, because we have really much more rudimentary problems of digitation still, something that might have been done in some of the museums in Germany in the 2000s, while here we still mainly don't have our collections digitized, and a lot of archives are not digitized. What do you propose for a more classical museum, a museum that's not predominantly exhibiting media art, but it's dealing also with more classical formats of art, how to approach or incorporate the idea of artificial intelligence in the way the exhibitions are set up, or how to harvest this kind of advanced tools in a much more limited museum?
So I also had some interference, but I think I got the question. So classical museums, they have one advantage. They have a stock of objects, for instance, or they have a stock of paintings, something like that. So those can get digitized, and then you have basically data set. And large data sets are then the basis for deep learning process. So, of course, you need to have to do the digitization first, but so does everybody else. Also, the museums in Germany, they now have to undergo this process of digitization. Even we as a ZKM, we are a very big institution and we used to have many decentralized archives settled at departments. Also, we now have to consolidate, and we have I call it the disadvantage of not having objects or paintings hailing from the very same category. So this makes it very to properly work with deep learning algorithms in this regard. So it's way more easy if you have paintings or objects. But I'm not sure whether this answered your question.
Yeah.
I don't even know whether I got it right through the speaker.
But my question really sorry, can you mute yourself? Okay, so my kind of question really regarded the what kind of, okay, we have to digitize and we have a certain set of data, but what, because he presented some of the cases which were more in line of surveilling the audience, but this is something obviously that is very problematic from a political and social aspect. So what to actually do, because you mentioned like in your project you're planning workshops, and I'm interested in what kind of workshops are you going to do and what kind of results are you anticipating? Because this is something where the application of this digital data is actually realized.
So again, I had lots of interference. So, I mean, wait a second, I will just quickly restart the driver and then I will start, because otherwise I cannot hear anything. Okay, maybe it works now. Yeah, absolutely. So those kinds of technologies, they are very problematic, but they exist in the public sphere already. So it's also for us very important if our visitors, let's say, being aware of this circumstance. And then, I mean, most of you know that there were, for instance, already big crises in regard to the ethical dilemma of the large-scale image data sets. So, since we did have the thing where there were facial recognition-based technologies which were not able to properly identify black people, or they identify them as apes or something like that. So, which is rather horrible. So, by making aware for such circumstances, we might also be aware of making a contribution, so that in the future those technologies might improve. So, there's also an example. So there was an artist, he's called Adam Harvey, and he brought Microsoft to deinstalling, respectively to erasing one of the largest facial recognition data sets, which was or which is the Celeb A data set, consisting of persons of public interest, because he realized there were components of the machine learning technologies and the surveillance technologies who spoke publicly, which was the reason why they were put in this data set. So again, there is an artist who was capable of making such a dramatic impact, causing Microsoft, such a big company, having their biggest data set erased. So by making aware for such a area, you will be able to properly have also the technologies improved. And muted. I thought it was again sound problems.
Okay, thank you, Yannick. Are there any other questions from the public? No, I think your joke at the end was really nice. Can you unmute yourself? Yes, I think your joke at the end, the AI-generated joke, created even more discussion. Although it was nicely placed, I liked it. But to continue with the discussion just now, I'm curious, like in the age of immense control, in the age of pandemics, it seems that the project that you were talking about is really corresponding to the discourse of medicine that is very much based on control. And I was curious, is this project going to replace all the guards in the museum, or do you plan to intend to kind of get rid of all these jobs that for many are the only source of income, and although it's very precarious. And recently, last week, here it was published an article on museum guards that it's a haven for all intellectuals, because this is the only place where you can read all the literature you want. There's no control, there's no ideological control, at least. You just sit there, and it's a kind of a facade, it's not a real job. Is this a new angle of the trend in Germany, at least? What do you think about that?
I think it's a very good question which can get answered very easily. No, as said, we do not aim presenting another panopticon. This is not the idea. What I presented to you were more like provocative rough demonstrations, which can quite easily lead to the conclusion, no, we do not want such things in the museum space necessarily. So no, it's different. So what we actually want to do with this, with these kinds of activities, we would more like to have the museum becoming some sort of cognitive system, where you have the museum receiving auditory, visual, and visual stimuli in order to improve the museum experience. So like having the possibility to make some sort of dialogue between the museum and the visitors, be capable control. I would even say we might end up with giving Owen sort of control in a way. Yeah, but we will also see how those discourses will change, how technology might change during the course of this project. And we will carefully watch it, and we will also provide a platform for these kinds of discourses.
Okay, thank you very much, Yannick. It was really informative.